Welcome back to ranking every Grammys Album of the Year winner from 1959 to the present. If you're confused by any of the previous placements or tiers that you see, I recommend pausing this video and going back to my previous video in the series. I'll try to put a link in the info box in the corner or just down in the description below. So yeah, sorry, and back to the video. Alright, here we go. We're into the 1970s. You may see some more familiar picks, familiar nominations, Album of the Year winners, and we're beginning with 1970, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And generally, I was pleasantly surprised with what I heard on this album. I had never even heard of this group until listening to this album and making this video, so I went in completely blind, and this is actually a quite enjoyable little fusion record. There's everything from soul to jazz to big band to folk to blues to rock. There's even classical with the bookended gymnopédie. I'm definitely not pronouncing that right, but the two variations that sort of sandwich the album. So you have a melting pot of styles, a lot of winding instrumental parts that reminded me just a little bit of Hot Rats. Just gave me a Frank Zappa Hot Rats vibe. So if you're into some fusion that has no regard for its musical limits, this is actually a solid pick. And I just can't put my finger on why the drums on this album just sound so good, you know, in terms of performance, the playing, the chops, but also just the mix on the snare drum is so crisp. So yeah, I mean, is every song perfect? No, not necessarily. There's a few derivative songs here and there, especially in the first half, I would say, but overall this album is fairly consistent in quality. And if you've not listened to this album, I actually do recommend it because it probably goes under the radar for a lot of music fans. So yeah, I think this album is very solid, and I would put it in the A tier. Next, from 1971, we have Bridge Over Troubled Water. This is a classic, foundational, legendary folk rock album. You know, listening to this album, I was in awe, really. I had sort of an aha moment. I started listening and I thought, you know, this is absolutely beautiful songwriting, incredible melodies. It reminds me a lot of the Lemon Twigs. But then I remembered that the Lemon Twigs debuted in 2016 and ended up borrowing from an earlier style of music influenced and inspired by this exact type of music. So I guess you could call it yacht rock, folk rock, classic rock, sort of revivalist sound from the Lemon Twigs. And yeah, this is where it comes from. This is the era of music, the style of music that sort of music is borrowing from. So yeah, that was my little Gen Z moment there. But yeah, this is that original sound. It's been copied before. It's obviously fantastic. I think it still holds up to this day. Classic songs on it. So yeah, I would put in the S tier. Alright, and then next we have 1972 with Carole King's Tapestry. So yeah, this is just a super solid singer-songwriter album from front to back. Once again, pretty much every single song is a hit from a songwriter perspective. You have great lyrics about friendships, relationships, insecurities, love, and King's vocals are just soulful, expressive. Not that I have anything new to add to the conversation. I guess I will say I've always been drawn to incredibly satisfying chord changes and melodic hooks on this album. I'm thinking of It's Too Late and Way Over Yonder, just to name a few. Just very, very solid. There isn't really a bad song on here. I think just super catchy. So yeah, not too many flaws on this album either for me, and I would put it in the S tier. Alright, next we got 1973, The Concert for Bangladesh, and we've got a live album. This was a recorded benefit concert that raised money and awareness for Pakistani refugees, and it's spearheaded by George Harrison. But we also have musical appearances from the likes of Ravi Shankar. We have Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, Billy Preston, even Bob Dylan. A revolutionary concept for the time, and it's pretty cool to hear all these legendary artists cross paths. In a small way, it feels kind of like a crossover episode between your three favorite TV franchises, especially because I feel like we don't see features that often in rock music as a genre. But that being said, I wish they fused the cultural sounds a little bit more. It would have been cool just to see some sitar or gospel organ passages in like a Bob Dylan song, for example. But instead, the way the album is structured, each artist separates their set list songs. But yeah, I think I'm just being a little bit too nitpicky. Honestly, I should just be grateful that any crossover happens between these artists at all. I only mention this because it feels like we hear Ravi Shankar play with Harrison on the first track, and we pretty much never hear from him ever again on the album. The performances are great though, solid. Obviously, these are legendary classic songs from Harrison, Dylan, solid live album. I guess its only limitations being the structure and just some creative flaws that I would have liked to see a little bit more. I'll just sort of put it in the B tier. Okay, next we have 1974, Innervisions. And here we have the first Album of the Year win from Stevie Wonder. And you could not ask really for just a better start to this amazing run that's coming up. Beyond just being an amazing soul album with a lot of funk, with this funk edge to it, a lot of funk leanings, it has a surprisingly poignant, very relevant political message to it as well. And you can listen to the song Living in the City just to sort of get a taste of what the sentiment is about. So yeah, just so much variety and one great song after the next. Amazing stuff. Obviously, a very critically acclaimed album. I don't want to yap too much about this. You already know this is a great album. I'm putting this very safely in the S. All right, and we keep the streak going with 1975, Fulfillingness's first finale. And 2 years in a row, Stevie Wonder takes home the Grammy, and he delivers once again. To me, this album stands as sort of the moodier, more understated, love song, ballad-infused, more jammier, jam session kind of record. And while I will say I think the highs on Innervision may just go a little bit higher, overall this album is still very, very consistent, super strong from front to back. I think this is a more soulful album, and I do see myself coming back to this album if I want more of a casual, just sort of relaxing listening experience. So yeah, very, very great album. Even still, I would put it in the A tier. Okay, 1976, we have Still Crazy After All These Years, and we have yet another win for Paul Simon. And while I think there are some pretty good highlights and ballads on this album, I think there's definitely some flaws with this one. This album kind of drags on by the end of it. The latter half is just a bit too sleepy, and they don't really add very much sonic variety, but that's just me personally. You know, the titular track is great. 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover is obviously a great, just drum groove, honestly, just an iconic drum groove. And I do have a soft spot for Slip Sliding Away, which is labeled as a demo on this album, and it is a bit of a long-winded kind of jammier cut, but I do remember it for being one of the few songs that we would learn in guitar class in high school. But yeah, just a little bit too sleepy for me, and I would just probably just put this in the C. It's not terrible, but yeah, not really my thing. All right, 1977, Songs in the Key of Life. And just when you thought Stevie Wonder couldn't get any better, no, he was just saving his potential. He was just storing more energy in the tank, and he comes out with this masterpiece. This is obviously his critically acclaimed, widely regarded as his magnum opus, and the critics and fans alike are both right. You already know this album, you know it's great, you don't need to hear it from me, but just as advertised, these songs are about emotions and experiences, universal experiences we all face in life, whether that be death and life itself, love, hatred, identity, race, childhood, growing up, pains, pleasures, religion, the world at large. This album just has it all, and Stevie Wonder delivers once again with soul, R&B, worldly, international sounds and instruments. There's so much variety in that department. There's even cuts like Contusion that sort of border this jazz fusion sound almost. There's complex key changes which mirror very closely the themes of this record. I mean, it's called Songs in the Key of Life, but our lives are always changing, and they're kind of changing like the keys in the songs are changing. I don't know if there's any meaning to that. I mean, if you look at almost every corner of the music world and music appreciation, whether that be through sampling or artists just being influenced by other artists, many instances point to this very record, and that's for good reason. You know, Pastime Paradise being Exhibit A. And somehow, despite being a double LP, you have 1 hour and 45 minutes of music. Stevie Wonder keeps you engaged the entire time, and not just engaged, but grooving heavily, and also at the same time simultaneously contemplating about the state of our world through the lyrics. So yeah, it's just a mystery to me how masterclass the execution is on this album, and the quality level is just at an all-time high from front to back. Yeah, so this album deserves all the praise it already gets, and this is to me what was missing from the Frank Sinatra run and a lot of the earlier records too, is that there's just so much more variety that keeps you engaged over a long runtime for an album. And many music circles will often throw this album as a contender in the discussion for, you know, the greatest album of all time, and that's because it low-key might be. So yeah, no more questions asked. It's the easiest S tier I think maybe the Grammys have ever picked. So we're at 1978 now, and we have Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. And I mean, this is just a great, extremely solid pop album, rock album, yacht rock, dad rock, classic rock, whatever you want to call it, album. And the power in this album lies in just the very sweet songwriting, this incredible succinctness. There's no excess, there's no fat trim on this album. I mean, if you want to pick one, I guess maybe the song Oh Daddy later on in the album is a bit more forgettable, but aside from that, it's very concise, relatively short, straight to the point, just no nonsense, very catchy pop rock hits, and they're still garnering new fans to this day, honestly. And I think they very well deserve it. Yeah, this album is one of the first albums I think that I've ever purchased on vinyl, so I do have a bit of a soft spot for it. This is also, I think, alongside Abbey Road, maybe one of the first albums I've ever sat through from front to back. And despite being much younger then, I wasn't bored listening to the whole thing. So I think that's just a testament to how great and how quality top-notch these songs are. Guitar playing is amazing. Obviously that bass line and the chain is iconic. So yeah, I would once again just put it in the S tier. We're at the very last album of the 70s award ceremonies, 1979. We have Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. And you know, this album for some reason feels like a bit of a guilty pleasure record. Are some of the falsettos and aesthetics on this album a little bit dated, a little bit cheesy, a little bit tacky? Maybe. But I don't really care. Because despite the mass anti-disco hate and Disco Demolition Act, a sad and dark day in American history that should be taught in the textbooks, honestly, this is undeniably just some of the most catchy music you'll ever hear, period. And how shameful and cringe of you 70s rock fans for being so conflagratory over just happy music, because it's just too happy apparently. I mean, the grooves, the vibes are just immaculate. Forcibly, they have to put a smile on your face whether you like it or not. And you can't really deny the cultural impact that disco music had on popular music in this country. And in a way, that influence does have this album to thank for effectively collecting an essential greatest hits album for the Bee Gees, but also just for disco music. I will say my only glaring downside to this album is that there are some more long-winded dance disco cuts that run a bit too stale for the runtime, which is not something that I can even blame the record for, honestly, because after all, this is a soundtrack and it's also a compilation of various disco adjacent artists, not just the Bee Gees. So by its nature, it isn't as concerned with maintaining a focused high-level concept that maybe a Songs in the Key of Life would. So that's what keeps it from S tier for me personally, but still very enjoyable. And I have no problem really putting it in the A tier. Let me know if you agree with any of the picks that the Grammys have chosen up until this point. What are some albums that you think were complete snubs, even in this earlier time period? And subscribe if you want to see the albums that are a bit more closer to the present as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.